Coming up next on Functional Moms Podcast.
So super important to me is a scale that can actually differentiate where the weight is coming from. So it can break it down and tell you this is how much of your weight is subcutaneous fat and this is how much of your weight is visceral fat. So subcutaneous fat is the fat that changes the way you look in your clothes, and visceral fat is the fat that lines your organs. And that's the fat that is actually really bad for you. You can actually have more subcutaneous fat and live in a larger body and be relatively metabolically healthy if your visceral fat is low. But if your visceral fat is high, even if you live in a skinny body.
I was gonna say, can you be skinny and have, you have no idea?
We call that skinny fat because you actually have visceral fat lining your organs, but the outside of your body looks very lean and thin.
And the only way you would know is if you used one of these scales.
If you did a measurement where you actually measured your visceral fat. And so that increases inflammation, increases your risk of insulin resistance and prediabetes and diabetes, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, like literally everything.
Welcome to Functional Moms Podcast, lifestyle medicine for women over 40. Let's age on our own terms.
We are on location at the Institute for Functional Medicine Annual International Conference in San Diego. This episode is for you if you'd like to learn how trackers like Apple Watches, Oura Rings, Fitbits, Whoops, and continuous glucose monitors can support your behavioral choices and help you lose weight, sleep better, eat better, and exercise more consistently.
We had the opportunity to hear Dr. Lara Zakaria speak. She is a pharmacist and nutritionist with a focus on implementing solutions for functional medicine and personalized nutrition. Dr. Zakaria works one-on-one with patients, helping them with behavioral change. Dr. Zakaria, thank you so much for coming on Functional Moms Podcast today. We really enjoyed your talk yesterday about trackers and how they can help us improve our health.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I feel like it's going to be really fun.
Thank you, so do we. So we'd like to start with, can you please explain what trackers are and some of the options available to consumers?
Absolutely. So when I think of trackers, I'm thinking about the kind of tech that you would put on your body in some way. It might be jewelry that you're wearing, like a ring or a watch, but it could also be something like what's called a continuous glucose monitor or CGM device, and it's going to measure something about your body, your heart rate, your blood oxygen level, your glucose, right? And you can then use that information to see how your body is doing. It's essentially helping you keep track of how your body is responding to whether it be stress or sleep or exercise or diet.
Absolutely, and there's so many out there. Could you tell us some of them?
Sure. So let's start with like the jewelry type stuff. So like Oura Ring, for example, is a very popular option. Apple Watches and Samsung watches, those usually have biometric trackers in them as well. There's also Fitbit, Whoop. So those usually will measure things like the quality of your sleep. They will usually track your exercise, your movement in general. Some of them have heart rate and something called HRV or heart rate variability, and they can also sense like stress. So they might like let you know that you're stressed out. They might like ping you to remind you to get up and take a walk. And so those are really like kind of paying attention to those kinds of measurements and metrics. And then you have something like a CGM. There's a couple different companies that make those. Those two big ones are Dexcom and Freestyle, and they make a version that's prescription that is largely for people that have diabetes, and then there's a version that's over the counter. So for Dexcom, they make the Stelo, and Libre, they make the Lingo, and those are available over the counter. You can usually just buy them by subscription or just pick them up online, and those will measure your blood sugar levels. There's an app that's attached to it, and then it, as the name implies, continuously checks your blood sugar. And over the course of the 2 weeks that you're wearing the device, you can see how your body is responding to your diet to what you're eating, when you're eating it, your exercise, even stress will impact your blood sugar, sleep will impact your blood sugar. So it's a great way to sort of pay attention to those things. And then I also always like to think about other things, like, for example, blood pressure monitors, at-home blood pressure monitors, I would consider part of this tech world.
Okay.
Scales that do body composition technically fall in this space because they're measuring your biometric data as well. There are even devices that measure your EKG. So if you have AFib or know somebody that has AFib, it's this tiny little device that you basically use it and it checks how your heart is pumping, and it measures an EKG pretty accurately on an app, so you can have those readings as well. So there's a ton of different devices out there depending on what you need, what you're trying to track, and what your focus is.
Yeah, it sounds like it's never been more exciting time to take control of your health with these trackers. And I have to say, like, for functional moms, our audience is women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and many of us are really set in our ways, and behavior change is so hard.
So hard.
So how can these trackers help us?
Absolutely. So I'm so glad you brought up the behavior change thing, because this has been kind of one of my soapboxes. So I'm going to back up, and first let's talk about why behavior change is so hard, because I think that helps us understand why these trackers can be so useful for some people. So a lot of our culture emphasizes this idea that you just have to like willpower through it. You just need more motivation, and if you're not doing the thing consistently, it's because you just aren't motivated enough. You don't have the willpower to do it. And we've associated health and fitness and weight loss with this idea that people who are dedicated are going to be successful in having better health. And that's just not true, right? There's a lot of reasons why you might really be motivated to, get fit or get healthy or change your diet or get into a better routine for your exercise or your sleep, but it just doesn't happen. And if you're a mom, you're probably getting pulled in 700 different directions.
Absolutely.
At any given moment. And your priorities are usually keeping the children alive, keeping your family alive, right? So there's a lot of things to consider. You're not just thinking about yourself and the thing that you absolutely have to do. And I find that a lot of moms in particular feel this pressure that they have to look a certain way, set an example with their health and their routines, and then at the same time be there for everybody else. And they're kind of getting pulled in these two directions, and then they're putting more pressure on themselves to wake up even earlier, stress their adrenals out even more, go to bed even later because they're staying up having to catch up on stuff. So as it is, your sleep is suffering, your stress levels are through the roof, and now you're asking your body to make a change. And the first thing that happens when we're in this stress fight or flight mode is the part of our brain that is responsible for rational thinking, for organizing ourselves, for doing executive function tasks and knowing like what goes next and how to like organize your day so you can get that workout in or you can prep ahead for your meals. That part shuts down, and the part of our brain that is like anxious and overly like analytical of the environment and like hyper vigilant, that turns on. And it's just part of our physiology. Like that's just the way our brain is built. It's part of our protective mechanism. And it's just that part of the brain that basically says, oh, you're stressed. There must be a saber-toothed tiger chasing us somewhere. So I'm gonna be hyper vigilant and make sure that that tiger does not get us. Don't you worry, it will not get you. And it's totally ignoring all the other rational thought of the things that you want to do, which then pulls you into the same habit, and it's so much harder to break that habit. In fact, it becomes stressful to make that habit. It becomes almost anxiety driving to break that habit. So now you don't want to change it because it's safer to stay still. So if you've ever tried to like make a change, right? You said, okay, starting Monday, I'm gonna start.
Monday is always the day.
It's always Monday. Poor Monday has so much pressure. You start on Monday, I'm gonna start taking a walk every single morning. And Monday comes along, you're like, yeah, I got it in. Tuesday, yeah, check, did it again. Wednesday, you get a frantic phone call and you're dealing with stuff and okay, I skipped it today. And then now all of a sudden, Thursday's gone, Friday's gone, Saturday's gone, right? You fall out of the routine. weeks. Now next Monday we're gonna start again. That's an example of what happens when you're in that fight or flight mode, because again, you just fall back to the old habit, and it's so much harder to stick on. So now, conventional wisdom, if you had more willpower, just do it anyway. Just put on your shoes, get outside, just get it done, right? That's counterintuitive to the way your brain works, right? Especially when there's nothing giving you feedback and saying that walk really helped your stress level, because the whole time you're walking, all you're doing is thinking about all the things you have to do, right?
Sure, yeah.
Right? So wouldn't it be nice to have something that immediately gave you feedback and told you that walk really helped, right?
Yeah.
That would be like a little dopamine hit, like, yes, that not only do I feel better and I got outside and I checked off the box, but also my blood sugar looks better. But also my stress level looks better, right? My sleep was better tonight, right? When you get that immediate feedback, that starts to rewire your brain, and you start to see that as a less scary change. And that's where the wearables and the trackers come in.
Okay, and so it's not as abstract as well, because you're seeing feedback in real time.
Right, because look, if I get a good night's sleep tonight, I might feel a little better tomorrow, but I'm not gonna feel like so awesome, right? It takes a few nights and consistency in terms of your sleep routine to really be like, yeah, I really feel different. Or even walking, right? You don't lose 10 pounds because you walked 20 minutes this morning, right? The benefits take time. They're well worth it, but they take time. So we don't have that immediate feedback. We don't necessarily have that same motivation to keep going when things get overwhelming, right? And so again, we know that when humans get that positive reinforcement right away, we're more likely to reflect back on, how did we do that? How did this happen? How did I get this score, this number, this benefit? And we try to replicate it. And so you're essentially just giving yourself a little reward system, and in little snacks, right?
Right, and it's almost like having like your own coaching, like your own like motivation.
Coach, like a coach telling you, good job.
right, exactly. And even like when we did that experiment, we did like 5 minute, like what does a 5 minute workout do? Because somebody would be like, well, is 5 minutes even worth it? And so we did an experiment, and we did a 5 minute workout for 5 days. And it was great because we got in, like we were doing 10 squats, 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups. For 5 minutes, we each got like 30 to 40 reps of each exercise. And it was like amazing. Now, she wore the Oura ring, so I don't know if you ever looked at what the feedback was on that.
Well, I mean, just the fact that I'm doing, like I'm getting my heart rate up a little bit. And you're right. Like, I mean, I'll admit, I'm a little addicted to my Oura ring. I was gonna ask you about that, because it becomes like exciting. And I think what you're saying is the dopamine hit. I didn't realize that's what I'm getting, but that is exactly what I'm getting. Like, because I'm seeing, wow, I walked all these steps, or my sleep was great, or my HRV is going up. Because your point about being stuck in fight or flight, so many of our audience is stuck in fight or flight. We've gotten so many comments from people that are like, I might be in it all the time. And they didn't even realize it.
Right, and so it's that realization, right? I am in fight or flight. And I definitely want to come back to your question, because that's such a good point about the addiction and the anxiety that comes along with it. So I definitely want to come back to that. But to your point, that when you are in that state, it becomes you're so used to being stressed out, you almost like normalize it to the point where you even like think you're benefiting from it. The number of times I've had patients tell me, I thrive when I'm stressed, I get more done, I actually like wait till the last minute, I procrastinate so that I get a little more stress. And what they're doing is you're pushing this catecholamine drive. So catecholamines are your like epinephrine, adrenaline. So that's the same thing actually. So epinephrine, in the US we call it epinephrine, in Europe they call it adrenaline, but same thing. But that's a excitatory neurotransmitter, meaning that it is the first thing that our brain produces when we get scared, anxious, excited, right? I call it the brake light effect. So you're driving, right? You're humming along at like 75 miles an hour or whatever, and you see brake lights in front of you. Do you even think about it? No, you are immediately, boom,
automatic.
I see everything around me. Somehow I now see 360. I'm evaluating who's behind me. If I brake, are they gonna hit me? I'm calculating how fast I have to hit the brake for the car in front of me. Are there cars to the side of me? Can I quickly swerve and change lanes, right? all of this is being calculated. It took me longer to say it than you actually thought it.
Right.
And that's because of that epinephrine, that adrenaline hit. And that's the first excitatory chemical that we get right after dopamine, by the way.
Okay.
So we make dopamine first and then we make that. And that wakes you up, and now blood is pumping, your brain's getting all like juiced up with blood and glucose so that it can fuel it. Your muscles are powered up, ready to go in case you have to punch some bear in the face or something, right? Right? This is like addictive, right? We know like there are adrenaline junkies that like go out there and jump off of buildings and stuff, like bungee jumping, right? Chasing this high. So it's legitimately a great feeling that we sometimes replicate that, right? We'll start downing more caffeine because caffeine stimulates that response. We will wait till the last minute because now you're like, oh, I only have 45 minutes. I gotta knock this out. It's gonna take me an hour. I bet I could do it in 45, right? You start to create these deadlines and you start to use stimulants to try to recreate that effect. Right?
It's funny that you say that because I can even think of myself. Sometimes I'll have something very important to do and I'll start adding on other things, making it harder or more complicated. Like
this obstacle course was not hard enough.
Right.
Well, let me add some more like things that I have to jump through. Absolutely. And that is a very typical pattern that I've noticed where usually it's women. It's not just women that do this, but it's usually women who are already overwhelmed. They're already in a burnout, and now they're trying to stimulate and get a little bit more energy. And so they recreate this pattern, probably without even noticing it, until somebody can reflect it back and point it out to them. And then they realize, oh, because left unchecked, that's what eventually snowballs and becomes chronic stress. That's when your cortisol starts to be chronically elevated. And we talk a lot, it's all over my social media, high cortisol causes like everything, right? But it's not actually the high cortisol on its own. Yes, that is problematic. That can actually impact your blood sugar, that impacts inflammation. It's linked to increased risk of like cardiovascular disease and diabetes and all this stuff. Yes, that is an issue, but eventually you burn out and that cortisol just crashes and now you're not making any. And we actually have to have cortisol. It's a Goldilocks thing. Like you don't want too little, you don't want too much. And our circadian rhythm, our wake-sleep cycle needs cortisol. It's what turns it on in the morning, and then it's supposed to dwindle down in the afternoon, and then you make melatonin, and then melatonin helps you go back to sleep. Right? And so we need this very precise cycle to happen at specific times, and it gradually rises and drops, and that is actually what helps us stay sane, that helps us become more resilient to stress, to sleep better, improves our immune system, our digestive system. Literally everything is linked to this cycle. Super important. So when you are in a state of fight or flight and your cortisol is too high, you're basically making cortisol at the wrong time in the wrong amounts. And then when you get to burnout, you're not making any cortisol. So you're just dragging. So the women that tell me that they're in burnout, usually they tell me I'm snoozing 300 times in the morning. I cannot drag myself out of bed. I am not motivated to get up and get up. The only thing that gets me out of bed is because I have to take my kids to school, because I have to get up and do XYZ. I have to get to work. And it's that phenomenon that essentially leads to you not even being able to do the caffeine trick anymore. Right now you just can't.
So that's how we know we hit burnout.
Absolutely. Okay. That's when you know you've really hit the wall. Like that is your hormones are just, they're puttering. They're like you're on fumes at this point. So what we want to do is create some sort of reminder, some sort of trigger that, hey, you're getting into that space. So I'll talk about the Oura ring because we're both wearing one.
Okay, sure.
It'll actually tell you about your stress level. We can't measure your adrenaline or your cortisol, but it can tell you what your stress levels are like, and it actually tries to kind of gently nudge you and remind you, hey, you're a little stressed right now. Right?
The thing about that, however, is like if you're working out, that's a good stress.
That's a good stress. But it'll distinguish, it actually turns off the stress response when it knows you're working out.
Really?
Yeah, it sort of shuts it off. It doesn't take it into account. And you could see it actually because it's measuring your stress. It shows you in bars, like, by the hour.
Okay.
And then if you work out, you won't see a bar because it turns it off and now it's measuring your activity.
Oh.
Okay.
And
I didn't even realize that. I thought it was included. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'll notice I'm stressed out on my Oura ring a lot sometimes. Like it could be like a whole day where I'll have hours of stress.
Same. Mine loves to tell me, you're more stressed than usual today.
Yes, it will say that. Yes. Right.
Like, yeah.
Now it could be something exciting, like you're giving a presentation or or we're doing a podcast. That could make us in stress mode.
And we should talk about the differences in stress, because not all stress is bad stress. Right? Some stress is actually good stress. Exercise is a great example of that. Right? Right now, my body's probably perceiving this as a stress. It's not stress, it's excitement.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to be talking to you guys, right? So all those things aren't necessarily bad stressors. So I equate it to building a muscle, right? You go to the gym and you are literally in pain as you're like working your biceps or whatever, right? And you're building heavier and heavier weight, and what happens, you get sore and that muscle rebuilds and gets stronger. Stress resilience is kind of similar in that way, in that you want to build in good stressors that have a physiological benefit, so that when a bad stressor comes along, because unfortunately I have not cracked the code on how to stop stress from happening.
Yeah, we can't.
So if you guys ever figure it out, please call me. So what we want to do instead is build our resilience, so that when that stressor happens, you're not completely knocked out. Right? And the healthier your adrenals are, the better your circadian rhythm is, the more often you are doing stress management techniques, you're breathing, you're exercising, you're meditating, you're getting good sleep, you're managing your diet, you're making sure your blood sugar is stable. When all of those things are checked off and you're introducing healthy stressors, when you have a really rough situation, your ability to handle it is so much better. And every single one of us knows this, because we have all had situations that were crazy and we were like rock solid, like totally rational, totally able to handle it, totally like everybody's looking to us and being like, what do we do, right? And we were totally chill and cool. And then times where we were completely frazzled and had no idea what to do. And as you start going through perimenopause and you get into menopause, your resilience starts to reduce, decline, because of the changes in your hormones, right? So even more important to really be honoring your adrenal system and that hormonal balance in your circadian rhythm, because knowing that you're just a little bit more sensitive to those stressors, even if you're checking off all the boxes and doing all the things, right? So just be that much more gentle with yourself and give yourself a little bit more time.
I'm hearing it might be good to be addicted to your Oura ring instead of being addicted to the adrenaline that I might be.
That's a real framework.
I like the framework.
That is great.
I don't like the word addicted.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah,
but I like where you're going with it, right? Because addicted to me feels out of control. It feels external.
Right.
I prefer the empowerment of it.
Yeah, you're being intentional about where you're putting your energy. And then I also want to add that I'm also hearing that while you're looking at and getting all that, like the Oura ring saying, hey, you're feeling really stressed right now, that it would be there, you would go into your toolbox and say, okay, because that Oura ring just reminded you, hey, you know what, you're right, let me break that cycle. Let me use a tool, like whatever it is. Sometimes just me doing this, like that to me is my trigger to recenter myself.
How many times I've caught myself breathing in my throat, literally, like instead of really taking a full diaphragmatic breath and really opening up my chest cavity, right, and belly breathing, right? So it's to your point, it can be this reminder, and so you're looking at it and you are using the information to make a decision that works for you in that moment. And sometimes the decision is, I can't deal with this right now, and that's totally okay as well. But there is, on one side, this addiction. Sometimes it's our people pleaser. Sometimes it's us being, as good as we can be, right? We want to check all the boxes. We want to be the A+ student. And so we see the score and we're like, yeah, I'm in the 90s today for my sleep. I'm in the 90s today for my readiness. I did XYZ steps, right? Sometimes that feels really good. And to your point, you become addicted to that hit of dopamine. Yes, I did it. I'm a star student, right? And I would invite you, when that is happening, to really reflect on why that matters so much to you, right? And to come back into your body and check in. Do you feel in your body like you got a 92 on sleep? Do you actually feel refreshed? What does that feel like when you're you got this kind of sleep and you went to bed at this time and you woke up at this time, and notice, did you wake up and you had a little bit more energy, or you were happier, or did you have to still go grab your coffee right away, right? Or do you see what I'm saying? Where even the score might be great, but you might be like,
you need to listen to your body and check in.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we are so disconnected from our bodies, like in this modern day, I feel like, so that's important.
Exactly. So to me, that's why I don't like the word addicted, because it's still, you're replacing it with maybe a healthier alternative, and maybe that's step one, and that's great, I'll take it. But also let that be an invitation to reconnect with your body, right? And to allow that to happen. And then at the same time, on the other end of that spectrum is what happens when you become anxious, because now it's telling you, you got a 42 on your sleep score. My sleep score today was terrible because I'm very jet lagged.
Yes.
And so I can look at that and be freaked out and think about, oh my God, I have so much to do today, and am I going to be able to focus? And I'm going to be dragging, and I'm planning out when I'm going to have my caffeine hit so that I can get through the day, right? And that becomes its own stressor, its own anxiety, and that's not healthy either. And recognizing if you're the type of person that does not do well with that kind of pressure to get the score up, or you just don't like having to constantly look at the app and be in your phone, those are very, very, very valid reasons to not wear the device or to periodically take it off.
Yeah, I thought about that. I was thinking maybe I should take a little vacation sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think a tech holiday is probably overdue for all of us.
that would be me. Like I did wear like the Fitbit for a long hot minute, but I did feel like I was always looking at it, and sometimes I'm just naturally I suffer from anxiety, whatever. Yeah. So it would trigger that part of me, and so I check in by like I like to write.
Yes.
So I just check in I'll just write, okay, what's going on today, like, and so that's, to me, that's so much better. That's what works for me. Yeah. But Kristen's like, after listening to your talk yesterday, she's like, so what do you think? Like, and so I am curious about some other things, because I am 50, I am like postmenopause, and I think that having some other information is helpful, and I just got to reel in that I don't let it take over my life. And Absolutely. So talking about stress, I know that one of the things that I think we are in is as women 40, perimenopause. Menopause is like this weight gain situation that seems to like continuously happen no matter what we do, which is adding stress, and we're looking. So it's like, how can trackers help us when we're trying to lose weight?
Yeah, this is a great question. I'm going to talk about 4 different device options.
Okay.
And then, as always, I'm going to bring it back to, do you really need it? Like, By the way, I'm a Libra, so I'm constantly flipping back and forth and giving both sides of the argument. So if you love that, thank you. If you don't, I find it frustrating, like my friends do. But that's why I want to sort of give you guys all the options, and also in thinking about your long-term health risks, right? For a lot of us, if you've struggled with your weight for a long time, if you're new to the fitness journey, maybe you had to take a break because you couldn't focus on it, right? And you're feeling overwhelmed with where to start, and the weight is really feeling frustrating. Now that your clothes fit, now you've got like rebudgeting for a whole new wardrobe, and it just doesn't feel like your body anymore. And those are all really, really valid reasons to want to lose weight and to want to work on your body. And I want to offer a little bit of a different perspective on it. One is, I really want to reiterate the conversation about muscle building for women, because I feel like, especially if right now you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, you probably come from an era where that was not really emphasized for us as we were growing up. It was about cardio, it was about running, it was about getting lean, right? And there was never really a conversation about weight building, weight training. Right. And in fact, I explicitly remember the idea that you were going to get bulky. Like, I had women in my family.
Exists. Yeah, I still have women tell me I don't want to get bulky.
Exactly, absolutely. But I remember women in my, like my aunts and like my grandma, like being like, because I was athletic when I was young, we don't want you to get too bulky. And I am the type that my muscle shows. Now I'm proud of that.
Yes.
Then it was something that I always felt like I had to keep leaning out, leaning out,
here.
right? And now it's still, I still hear this.
I have heard from my
bulk.
own daughter, like who is 13, saying, I want to be careful because I don't want to get bulky if I lift weights.
The trends are shifting
Yeah.
now back to sort of the long, lanky, like Kate Moss look, you know? And so I think this is gonna become more and more pervasive. I think we're gonna go back to that. And so I don't think I ever get sick of reminding you that not only, I have no issue with bulk. I see bulk the same way that I see curves. Like, however your body looks, however it was constructed, as long as you can use your body, you feel good in your body, you are able to open jars and lift things up and play with your kids, your body is great. Like, it's doing its job, and I'm so happy and grateful for that, right? So that's one perspective, right? The other piece of it is we are now understanding the implications on our longevity and our health, particularly perimenopause, postmenopause women. We start to lose our muscle at an accelerated rate if we're not actively making sure we're getting in enough protein and that we're not lifting heavy. Like, you have to do work that is actually challenging your muscles. And that is tied to our long-term bone loss risk, so osteoporosis, our heart health risk, and our brain risk. And the better that you can maintain the muscle, the longer you can maintain your heart, your brain, and your bone. And that is such an important message, because as we're having much better conversations about perimenopause, menopause, and HRT, I think that this is another protective factor, whether you choose to do HRT or not, because that's a whole other conversation for sure, but that is another option to preserving those things, to preserving your longevity and all that health. But also the muscle piece is another one. Whether you choose to do HRT or not is an important piece of this conversation.
So is there a tracker that will be tracking, like, something that we can wear that will tell us, hey, you are gaining muscle, your bones are getting stronger?
So you can't wear it, but that's where a body composition scale comes in.
Okay.
Right? We step on the scale, you're on this weight loss journey, you step on the scale, you like shout expletives at it because the stupid thing is like going in the wrong direction, right? But all that's telling you is how much your everything weighs, like literally, like your bone, the fat on your body, the bones, your brain. Maybe you got smarter overnight and now you weigh a couple pounds more, right? I don't know. But it's also counting the water weight, and we fluctuate sometimes in terms of inflammation and or fluid retention. If you didn't have a good bowel movement, frankly, that could add pounds to the scale. It doesn't really tell me anything. Like, okay, great, right? And you could be losing muscle and losing weight at the same time. And that's not helpful.
Yeah, that's a concerning thing, especially at our age, because we don't need to lose any more muscle.
Absolutely. So, and if you're taking an Ozempic or Wegovy, one of those drugs, one of the major side effects of that is muscle loss. So super important to me is a scale that can actually differentiate where the weight is coming from. So it can break it down and tell you, this is how much of your weight is subcutaneous fat, and this is how much of your weight is visceral fat. So subcutaneous fat is the fat that changes the way you look in your clothes. And visceral fat is the fat that lines your organs. And that's the fat that is actually really bad for you. You can actually have more subcutaneous fat and live in a larger body and be relatively metabolically healthy if your visceral fat is low. But if your visceral fat is high, even if you live in a skinny body,
I was going to say, can you be skinny and have you have no idea?
We call that skinny fat because you actually have visceral fat lining your organs, but the outside of your body looks very lean and thin.
And the only way you would know is if you used one of these scales.
If you did a measurement where you actually measured your visceral fat. And so that increases inflammation, increases your risk of insulin resistance and prediabetes and diabetes, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, like literally everything.
Now the scale actually can tell you about your visceral fat?
So what are some of the brands that...
So there's a ton of brands. Withings makes one, InBody makes one. There's a ton of them. You literally can have your pick in terms of brands. I think even Fitbit makes one, and the Fitbit also, if you have a Fitbit watch, for example, it'll sync into your app as well. So that's another option. And The difference is what you want to make sure that when you're looking at the scales, that it measures, not all of them measure visceral fat, so make sure that's one of the things that it'll report to you. And number two, that it also breaks down body composition in terms of your muscle density as well. And it should measure muscle mass and muscle percentage. I find muscle mass easier to track because the percentage will change when your weight overall changes. So it's a little bit harder. You have to do more math, basically. Right. But with the muscle mass, that's an absolute number, and you can make sure that it stays within a certain range and or increases as you're losing weight.
Okay, so for weight loss, definitely want to get a scale that's not just measuring our overall weight. We want to know our visceral fat. We want to know our muscle mass.
Yeah, and some will even measure your bone density too.
Wow, yeah, that's phenomenal. Okay,
I can't speak to the accuracy of all of them.
Right.
It's good to have that, and they'll also measure water weight so that you can tell if some of what you're carrying is inflammation or excess water, and so that's also helpful psychologically when the scale's going in the wrong direction or you're feeling puffy and bloated, that it's not in your head. You can actually literally measure.
Okay, and so then what would be your other top tracker for weight loss?
So number two would be a continuing glucose monitor. Okay. So that is a way for us to see how your body is responding and using sugar in the moment. So immediately and or right after a meal, it basically will read you what your sugar is doing in your blood. And what you could do with that is experiment on how meals are impacting your blood sugar, because we all respond to different foods differently. So you might eat oatmeal tomorrow and your blood sugar is beautiful little up and a beautiful gradual little decrease. I might eat my oatmeal tomorrow and it goes all the way up, super high spike, and then drops dramatically. We don't want that. I always say you want a boring roller coaster. You don't want a super exciting one, right?
Okay.
Right.
I was going to say, like, for the average woman out there she's like, how the heck am I gonna know how to even read this thing? Where it would make a difference for me, because maybe I'm doing this glucose monitor, but if I can't read it,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Right. There are some companies that actually have a dashboard with coaches and with feedback that could be really helpful, or work with a practitioner, a functional practitioner that understands how to use and leverage the CGMs to help guide you. Because to your point, other things also spike that blood sugar. Stress, right? That cortisol, when that starts pumping up, you're gonna notice that your blood sugar is also gonna rise along with it, which is wonderful because your body needs that fuel in that moment. So your body's trying to provide more glucose so your cells can do their thing. I was running around one day. I was super stressed out over, I think I was running late for something, probably coming here, running late for something. And I was super stressed out. I was at the airport, that's what it was. I was at the airport and I was running late. I was rushing to catch this flight. And I looked at my CGM data afterwards, and you could see it the moment that I got to the airport to the moment that I boarded that plane, it just went whoop and then started to come down. And it's just so interesting because it reinforces what stress is doing to your body, right? And it sort of teaches you that there's a connection.
So I'll share, I have used the CGM and I found some really interesting things, like sweet potatoes, which I thought was healthy for me, spikes the heck out of my sugar, really bad.
Right, and then when you couple that sweet potato with something else, you might notice a different response.
Notice eating an apple plain would spike it very high, but if I had some nut butter with that, it's not going to. So I think it's such a helpful tool for people because you really have no idea what's going on in your body.
Or it motivates you to take a walk. You see, I had a dinner, maybe it was a little extra starchy, and so my blood sugar went up, and I go, you know what, I'll take a quick little 15-minute spin on my Peloton, or I'll go take a walk, right? And now, poop, balances out, right?
Absolutely.
And another thing that can spike your CGM is exercise. And so it might also go up, but then steady out post-exercise. You fuel, and it helps to pump it up back again. So it's just super helpful in really understanding what's happening in your body and how it's responding to the habits that you're making, and then really reminding you, because sometimes we really get freaked out, I had a donut or I had something I shouldn't have, and you look at it, it's actually it wasn't so bad because we took a walk afterwards, right? And so it just can really help put things into
Perspective.
on both ends of that spectrum.
And especially if you're a woman, if you're noticing these numbers are creeping up, like your A1C sometimes starts to go up, like all these things at menopause happen. I think it's a useful tool.
Absolutely, absolutely. It also like ties into sleep. So next I'm going to talk about the Oura Ring, and I'm going to sort of tie it to the CGM too. So the Oura Ring, a Apple Watch, a Fitbit, whatever you're using to monitor your sleep, those that can help you understand how you're sleeping. And then if you're waking up in the middle of the night, for example, the dreaded 3 a.m. wide awake, right? I usually say, note if you also notice that you have to use the bathroom immediately, right? That usually
I noted that the other night. I said to you, I'm like, I had to go to the bathroom at 3 a.m. and
that usually means that your blood sugar probably dropped,
okay,
and your cortisol probably spiked. Right? If you have a CGM on, you could see it, because you can see it if it matches on the Oura.
I just, CGM stands for?
Continuous glucose monitor.
All right, continuous glucose monitor, CGM. Just for people like, if they're like, what the heck is CGM?
Yeah, I try to mention that in the beginning. So I'm glad that you repeated it just in case. Perfect. So if you are looking at your Oura Ring and you're seeing what time you woke up, you can see if it correlates to when the CGM actually said that your blood sugar was low. And so you'll see that and you go, okay, my blood sugar's dropping in the middle of the night. That's stimulating cortisol. Cortisol's waking me up. And now I'm having trouble going back to sleep because my cortisol spiked too early, and it was supposed to not spike for hours later.
Okay.
And now you're up and you're like staring at the ceiling or scrolling through TikTok or whatever.
And then what can you do about that?
So now you can eat a meal or a snack a little bit closer to bedtime. So usually we're like, don't eat before bed.
Okay.
Right? But you might have to eat before bed. And so eating something that is a good source of protein, a complex carbohydrate, maybe a little bit of fat, will help fuel you for the night. And so like I usually say, like Greek yogurt with berries or a handful of nuts and seeds or something like that is a good snack. You don't want something super heavy, nothing crazy, but just enough to give you a little bit of a pre-sleep fuel.
So that's so interesting, because most of us are thinking this is a bladder problem. Like maybe
it can be.
Okay.
It can be. But it can also be both. And that's, again, this is why the CGM can be helpful. And if you don't have a CGM and you're like, hey, that's me, I wake up at 3 a.m. maybe, is it a bladder problem? Is it not? Experiment. Have a snack a couple nights in a row before you go to bed and see if it improves.
Now, when you say before bed, do you mean like
I usually tell people, like, do it about an hour-ish, like within an hour before going to bed. You want it sort of close enough to when you're going to bed that it also lasts you through the night, because we're fasting overnight, right? That's why we call it break fast, because you're actually fasting overnight. So you just might need to shorten that fasting window overnight so that it's not completely dropping off too early and then stimulating that response.
Wow, that was super helpful. Thank you so much.
So we have to ask you about the EMFs that these trackers emit. People ask us about that too. Like with my Oura Ring, I know people are like, oh, but don't you not want to have that on because it has Bluetooth in it? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I get that question all the time, and I have to admit, I have yet to find any really compelling research about the EMF actually disrupting the sleep. From my understanding, everything I've seen is that this is pretty low frequency, particularly the Ring, I'm gonna speak specifically to that, is pretty low frequency, and it is one of the lowest emissions of EMF. It's basically running on Bluetooth, which is one of the lower ones, and so it doesn't have as big of a hit in terms of that. One thing you can do is, if you put your phone on airplane mode, that's gonna turn off the Bluetooth. It'll still collect data at night, so at least you're not getting the back and forth sort of conversation, and it'll just sync the data in the morning for you. So that's one way to reduce it a little bit. And if I'm being honest, it's probably a really good habit to keep the phone out of the room anyway, so 2 birds, 1 stone in that case. When it comes to like the watches and stuff, I think those are a little bit more active in terms of emitting frequencies. So I can't really speak as much about that. But again, I think there are certain people that are much more sensitive to the EMFs. And if you notice that it is impacting your sleep, then I think believe your body, and maybe this is not for you. It's another reason to say that this is not for me. I've noticed that folks who have the watches don't tend to like to wear them when they're sleeping. And so to me, that's like in and of itself a reason to just not worry about it. And again, If your sleep is an issue, right, you are noticing that you need to monitor your sleep, then maybe just wear something while you're sleeping for a few weeks or a month, and then get rid of it, right? Like, don't wear it, or wear it periodically, right? Learn what's happening in your body and then put it away, and then you don't need to necessarily be wearing it 24/7. You could use it more as like an experiment versus this continuous thing that you're doing. And at the end of the day, just again, going back to listen to your body. That's probably gonna tell you a lot on whether or not you need to do this or not. And I always say, if you don't know what you're gonna do with the results, then maybe you don't need it, right? So if we're not at the point that you feel compelled to use the results to change your behavior in some way, maybe it's not needed, right? It's an extra thing that you can skip today. Yeah. I want to mention one more device, just going back, one more factor, just going back as we were talking about devices for helping us lose weight. So piggybacking on what we said about the trackers, like the Oura rings and the Fitbits and whatnot. Part of that is helping us understand our stress levels, because that's a major factor that impacts our ability to lose weight, same as our sleep quality. But there's also a way for us to measure what we call metabolic flexibility. And metabolic flexibility is kind of like how efficient and how smooth your body is at switching between burning fat and burning glucose. And there's sort of a misconception that you have to always be burning fat or that you have to always be burning glucose. And actually, the real goal is for you to be able to switch seamlessly between the two. When you just had a meal, you should be burning glucose, and when you're in between meals or fasted, you should be burning fat. And your ability, your body to know which one to do when is a marker of metabolic flexibility. And we can actually measure that. There's as far as I know, only one device that's like a consumer device called a Lumen device.
I've tried that too.
Yeah, and it's like, it looks like
She's
a little breathalyzer.
It looks like a vape.
It looks like a vape, and I always feel ridiculous doing it in public because I don't vape, I don't smoke, and so I'm like, they're gonna think I'm smoking. I promise I'm not. And so that helps you measure what your metabolic flexibility is, and it gives you real feedback in terms of okay, you need a little bit more carbs, or your goal today is to be lower in carb, or hey, it looks like your exercise requires you to ramp up the protein today. So it's super helpful in that kind of feedback to help you get the score to where you want it to be to get more flexible.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that one was a little challenging to use for me because it was frustrating because I felt like I was always burning carbohydrates, and I wonder if a lot of people are.
A tip for you or for anybody else who might be using the device and experiencing that, because I had the same experience. I was eating not enough carbs.
That could be it too.
Thinking, I'm burning, I must need to restrict carbs, and I was going super low carb, and as soon as I introduced carbs, it adjusted.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's really, really cool, because I think so much of us, especially recently, there was the anti-fat craze of the 80s and the 90s, and now we're carbohydrates are the devil. And so I think a lot of us are restricting carbs, and I see this in my burnout patients, by the way. You need some carbs. Perimenopause, sometimes you need more carbs. Sometimes in postmenopause, you can get away with low carb and you actually might thrive on low carb. But I think that for so many of us, we're constantly low carb versus cycling carbs, and that we end up in that phase, and the Lumen's sort of picking up and reflecting that. So give it a try, again, experiment and see if it changes anything. But I agree with you, because when I first got it, I got frustrated. I stopped using it for months, and then I went back to it. I was like, why haven't I been using this? This is super cool. So it does take there's a little bit of a learning curve, and I definitely encourage you to work with somebody who understands the device.
I think
and
that's
can
very
coach you
helpful.
on it. Yeah.
And I think it's amazing that you as a practitioner are helping your patients understand the data, because as a consumer, it's challenging to figure it all out. I think.
And that's the thing, kind of circling back and sort of giving the flip side of it, right? As promised, these things can be challenging. It takes time to get used to it. This is why I experiment on myself, and I try to do it for myself, because I want to understand what those challenges are. I want to feel the anxiety. I want to feel the dopamine hit. I want to know what's frustrating about the app, what I prefer, what I don't prefer, so that I can guide. And my goal is always to empower my patient to know how to navigate it, whether it's to get the device or not, and then once they have it, what to do with it so that they're getting the most out of it and minimizing some of the negative stuff that we talked about. And at the end of the day, I don't think these are for everybody. I think that they might not even be for everybody all the time. You might have to take breaks and kind of put it aside for a while, come back to it when you need it. And I think also there is this real kind of aspect of over relying on the technology to guide you versus coming back and getting into your intuition and letting your body guide you. And ultimately, the device should really be more like a crutch for you to come back into your body, and not so much that it is the thing that's driving you around, right?
It's more like an aid,
Yes.
right? It's like an aid so that you can come back into your body and you got the data and then like, okay, this worked and this, I got that, lowered that spike, and kind of like work with yourself. And so I guess like if someone went to you and you're doing like a one-on-one, I think also maybe it's like figuring out, which I think is there's so many devices. Like sometimes I could feel overwhelmed with like, all right, well, do I get the Oura? Do I get the Fitbit? Do I get the Smart? Do I get, the like, do I need it? Like, what do I need? So I guess it's great to maybe sit down with someone and talk about what my concerns are, where I am with my health. And say, hey, you know what? Maybe these two devices may work well for you just to like get you where you need to be.
Totally, and it depends what your goals are, right? Because if you're really interested in just understanding your fitness journey better and how you're working out and you're moving, a Fitbit or a Whoop might be a better option for you. If you're really dedicated to understanding your resilience and your stress response and your ability to, recover from stressors and from sleep, right? That is probably more of an Oura ring category, right? And so it each kind of shines in some department,
right?
And you might, out of convenience, out of cost reasons, right? What makes the most sense? Where you prefer to wear the device, that could play into it. So there's a lot of different reasons that you might choose one option versus the other. And don't let the stress of picking one like stress you out. Like honestly, like that's also its own stressor.
It is. So thank you so much. This has been so helpful.
So
we would love for you to share, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I am probably too often on Instagram, so please come find me on Instagram at Foodie Pharmacist, spelled with 2 F's. And I am also on TikTok and on LinkedIn, so I'm always active there, sharing different kinds of information on those 3 platforms. Same handle, or you can find me at larazakaria.com.
Excellent.
Perfect.
And we will definitely have this information on our
in the show notes. We'll definitely put it there.
Yes, I got it.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me. This was so much fun. I knew this was going to be a fun conversation.
It's a good one.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We need your support. If you're enjoying the show, follow, like, and subscribe. Thank you for Aging Strong with Functional Moms Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment or review. Email us at info@functionalmoms.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button.